Welcome to my channel. My name's Bissy and season 3 is done. And I just wanted to say a massive thank you to absolutely every single one of you who have watched along with me this entire time. This has been so much fun watching it with you all. So thank you to every single one of you who have liked, shared, commented and hyped my videos. You all are amazing. We've also gone from 11% to 15% of you who are subscribed, but I'd love to get that number up to 50%. So if you're enjoying my videos but you haven't already, please do subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into the breakdown of the Vampire Lestat finale. So for this breakdown, I'm going to focus on each section rather than every scene because we did jump around quite a bit. So first off, let's focus on the long table. Now, Lestat's hunger and the theme of consumption has been a massive thing throughout this entire season, actually throughout the entire series. Most of the scenes in Dubai were around either dining or speaking about dining or consuming of some sort, and it's the same here. So I thought I would note that because it is such a prevalent theme. We find Lestat seated at one of the heads of the long table, and Lestat seems excited at the prospect of seeing Claudia. He even bounces with excitement when he notices Antoinette. And speaking of Antoinette, Gabriella says that Miss Brown would get her turn, but I don't think we saw that. And side note, Antoinette goes from typing on a typewriter to typing on a laptop, which I think symbolises the progression of Lestat in his own psyche. Now in episode 3, Magnus mentioned to Lestat in the car that they were on course 68, and I did wonder of what, but it seems they've been feasting on his soul. But physically, the people at the long table, Gabriella, Louis, Nikki, TC, Antoinette, Magnus, and later on, Marius, the people are eating sheep's head, eyes, and sausages. But there is also blood, so again, consumption. I mean, everybody at this table is a vampire now, so they don't need to consume food. I mean, they wouldn't enjoy consuming food in real life. So I think it's very significant that they are consuming, especially a sheep's head at this time. The long table moves from the forest, the scene of the burning, but also where Lestat finds peace with birdsong, to Magnus's tower, the scene of the horrors that Magnus subjected him to, and also where he was turned. And finally, to the studio, where he spent 4 months making this album to please Gabriella, but where he also spent time immersed completely in music, one of his few great joys. In the forest, he confronts his younger selves. In the tower, he's berated, criticised, mocked and antagonised by his maker and most of his fledglings. In the studio, he's confronted about the performance where his muses were not in attendance. The errors were pointed out by the tenor, in the same way that Lestat did to him. And on the word child, glimpses of what Gabriella has done to him over the centuries flash in Lestat's mind, and he sings her name over and over and over. Scenes from his childhood as she made him watch the women burn. Scenes at their dining table, Gabriella's turning, scenes of Gabriella with the Italian man, Gabriella touching him after he killed the wolves, and the look on his face as she does so. Scenes from her return to him this time, and the sound of Lestat screaming for his mother. But he also confronts Gabriella about taking him to watch his friends burn at the age of 9. Gabriella says that she took him to see these women and children burn to show him who these people are. They are not her people. This is not her home. She could not leave, but she wanted one of her sons to make it out of there. This right here is who these people are. But Lestat stayed home until he was 29. Now I say 29 because Lestat mentioned to Daniel in episode 3 that he moved to Paris and met Nikki in Paris when he was 29. But in this scene, Gabriella says 30. So, I mean, 29 to 30, there's not much difference, but both ages have been mentioned in the show. And Gabriella calls him a cabbage. But then we get a glimpse of Gabriella telling Lestat that she loves him right after she's finished using the Italian man. And Lestat calls to his mother. We see flames appear as the scene of Lestat holding Claudia and forcing her to watch Charlie's body burns appears, repeating what he learnt from his mother. And sat at the table, all Lestat can do is make the noise that he said that Nikki made as he burned. as though Lestat himself was burning, right behind those flames. Magnus then dares to chastise Gabriella for touching Lestat. I mean, they're both monsters. How dare he? Now, for just a moment, I want to speak about the word failure. Now, to me, this is just a personal thing, but I only feel like I've failed if I haven't given 100%. I mean, I think there is a difference between failing and not succeeding, because you can try 100% and not succeed, but I don't class that as a failure, in my opinion. I mean, for me personally. So it is difficult for me to watch Lestat be called and call himself a failure constantly. But what do you think of the word failure and the fact that the entire album is titled The Failures? So back to Magnus, we see that the final seat is taken up by him, another critical voice in Lestat's head. But Lestat is the only one who can control the volume, Gabriella said. Plus, as a side note, if Nicky knows their exact location as Daniel walks Lestat down the street, he also knows where his body is. And given the fact that he's zipped up in a bowling ball bag, I wonder how that works. And as the snooze on the alarm of his self-loathing rings, Lestat stands up and really takes the reins. But before he does, Daniel says, as he peers his head into the bag, that he's over his transformational trauma. He also says, I only give a shit about Dan. And I found that very, very interesting. Now, onto the butcher shop. We see that this is how Armand fights. He doesn't fight with his fists, but this is how he fights back. The planning, the scheming, the waiting, and then the striking. Armand has 3 things he'd like to highlight to confess to Louis. 3. And note, I really, really do not like the way that he's perverted the steps of recovery. I mean, he's done it throughout this process, starting by infiltrating the meeting with Alex. I mean, in fact, I hate it. Ugh. Armand backdoored his way into Lestat's band and ruined it for ruining's sake. I mean, he found it fun. And Armand still has his backdoor into Lestat's band through Alex. I mean, it was shocking for me to see Armand acting like this. I mean, the set, the butcher shop, right after he had just removed Louis' head, and his demeanour. And with the caveat that this is Lestat telling Louis' story, I believe that Armand is saying all of this and being so openly maniacal because he believes that Louis will forget all of this. I mean, that's if they're successful at reattaching his head to his body. And just a side note, once Armand has what he wanted, he simply walked away and didn't seem to care too much if Farid could or indeed would reattach Louis' head. We learn about Armand's plan to hurt Louis after Dubai. Armand said that Louis was his Claudia. In the same way Louis had an obsession for forgiveness regarding Claudia, Louis was that for Armand. So the search for the one thing that would destroy Louis started that night in Dubai. He said that the idea of her was conceived the moment Louis slammed him against that wall. But my question is, was the madness that followed in Louis part of the plan, or just a happy coincidence? And was the fact that this ultimately brought Louis and Lestat closer together part of the plan, or an unforeseen accident? So Regina was mind-effed into a situation that she really, really couldn't get herself out of. I mean, she tried in the best way that she knew how. She walked into a police precinct and said, I'm in some trouble. It's weird, he's a vampire. And even as Armand tries to get her to rest, she lets her true feelings for Louis out. She says she likes him. She felt for him. She says, they're going to sell a snuff tape, Louis. Don't give it to them. Now, one thing I did want to know is that I found it interesting. Again, this is Lestat telling the auction winner what Louis told him about the scene where his head was removed from his body. Okay, so again, that is the caveat. But I did find it interesting that Regina's speech pattern seems to be almost Dickensian. I mean, nobody speaks like this, like calling him a fiend. I mean, I know East London and yeah, nobody speaks like this. So I did find it very, very interesting that that was the speech pattern that she had adopted in that moment. Again, it is a telling of a telling. And back to Armand, he says to Louis that you're going to make amends so we can both move on. And to me, this was when the light bulb came on my second watch. This entire exercise isn't only to get an apology out of Louis. It's not just for amends. In my opinion, it's so that he can move on completely and begin his relationship with Daniel, with none of the ex-drama that he and Louis had with Lestat. A clean slate. Maybe Daniel seeded the idea after his conversation with Farid in episode 4. And it felt like Armand was killing two birds with one stone, making Daniel happy with this huge gesture. I mean, this is similar to offering Daniel the sun, if you let him be his maker, and putting a full stop at the end of his and Louis' relationship. Let's not forget that the revenge plan was put into place 3 years ago, and I think that this was a way to have a definitive end. Armand slams his hand on the table as Louis declines, like a child. His plan isn't going the way he wanted it to in the moment. It's a tiny detail, but to me, it's showing that Armand is still back there in Italy. It's that pain that's driving him in this particular moment. Not the patient aggressor, not the cult leader, but the child. It seemed that Armand just wanted to know that Louis understood him. And I think back to their walk in the Louvre. And I really do believe that that was a genuine attempt to allow Louis in by telling him the worst things that happened to him. Louis acknowledges what Armand went through at 12 years old, and the fact that they didn't speak about the fact that Louis was indeed a pimp only decades before they met. Louis, in spite of the fact that his head had literally been removed from his body by Armand, and the fact that this whole thing was being live streamed to a room full of people in another country, Louis finds compassion for that child, and he apologizes. And that sigh from Armand when Louis is done, I mean, I'm lost for words. Now, just a couple of things that I wanted to note. Louis says, the love of my life was him. Now, Louis uses the past tense here, and I don't know, I don't want to look too deeply into that, but I found it interesting. And another note, that Louis' neck scar is gone by the auction. So it makes me wonder whatever happened to Armand's eye must have been fairly recent to the auction. Okay, and on to Daniel's section. So we transition from Armand to Daniel on the word companion. And I absolutely love that the bowling alley employee calls Daniel's wife the boss. Literally, big boss. Daniel says later to Ragland, rescue the head, save the world. And that really reminded me of Heroes. Do you remember that show, Heroes? Where the mantra was almost, save the cheerleader, save the world. Ragland says, make more. We came up with that. And on Ragland, I've got a really big question. I mean, is he using the royal we here? Or is this a rogue plan of his? The most we're seen of Ragland's character is in the show Telemasca. And very briefly, without spoilers, Ragland plays the long con with Guy, and that's Guy Anatole. He's the main character in Telemasca. He knows that Guy's lying, and he plays along, right until the opportunity arises for him to further his own agenda, and he throws Guy right under the bus to the London Coven. The events of the scene wind up favouring Ragland, and he walks away on top, with exactly what he came for. So why would Ragland want the Great Conversion to take place? Well, from Telemasca, we know that he wants every move he makes to benefit him in some way. So how might he benefit from the Great Conversion? The only answer that I'm able to land on right now is, where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And Ragland is nothing if not an opportunist. And to speculate any further about his motives in the show would be tricky for me, as we just haven't been given much more detail in the show. But back to Daniel, he seems lost in that bowling alley to me. He's angry with Lestat, he's confused by Alex, I think he's still unsure of Armand and his motives. I mean, he isn't sure if Armand sent Alex there to watch him. And as I mentioned in the long table section, Lestat says that Daniel says to his head in the bowling bag that Dan only cares about Dan. But faced with Ragland and his backup, Daniel gives in and allows Ragland to take Lestat's head back. And this section I'm calling pretty effing great. So at the show that never started, we meet those who Lestat has murdered, made, or memorably traumatized. And note, Lestat says, I was supposed to stage dive at a certain point, but he doesn't. Now, is he recreating the show or a dream? I mean, that's what it felt like to me. We meet Enzo, a man that Lestat drained at a Christmas market in 1953 in Vienna. Now, a lot of time was given to Enzo, and I don't know why exactly. I mean, I don't think it was Enzo Ferrari, but Lestat is sorry. He seems to have a lot of regret around Enzo. We also meet the inspiration for the song Black Licorice. In episode 2, Lestat corrected TC and said that that song was about the first kill after he and Louis reconciled. And if you remember, when Louis meets up with him in 2022, he'd been feeding on rats for a very long time. Lestat said he killed him in the lower ninth, but I'm really intrigued by the red truck that Black Licorice is leaning on. But ultimately, Black Licorice acts as another snooze reminder. And as Lestat declines, Paul appears. At the beginning of this scene, Lestat says that the people here were people he had murdered, made, or memorably traumatized. And on my first watch, I was so sad at the thought that maybe Lestat actually lied, and Paul might have been there because Lestat was actually the reason that he jumped. But after rewatching and sitting with it for a little while, it doesn't seem to me that Paul falls into any of those three options. He wasn't there all along. I mean, he wasn't there from the beginning. He appeared at Lestat's lowest moment. And this suggests to me that his appearance was something else. Something outside of Lestat's victims as he described. But I mean, of course, I could be wrong. That's just my interpretation. Paul comforts Lestat by telling him that Louis does indeed love him, and thanks Lestat for loving Louis the way that he needed to be loved. Then Paul hears the birds again and presses stop on the snooze button. Then Lestat wakes up in his coffin on the tour bus. Gabriella and the Telemasca have managed to reattach Lestat's head to his body, and, notably, given him a fresh blow-dry. Plus, they've dressed him, ready for his awaited audience. And after Lestat finds and reconnects with Louis, he gives it to Gabriella. It's been 7 episodes coming, but he finally gives it to her, and it was amazing. But we know that he does eventually, despite everything, despite screaming at her that he wouldn't, he does indeed perform. And the consequences are dire. We catch up with Lestat just over halfway through his recordings, number 58, side A, of 111 albums. And we see the destruction that happened after the show. The destruction that followed after the Queen awakens. The city has been flattened, but not Lestat's home. I mean, the band's home is gone. But interestingly, Lestat's home still has power. And as Lestat surveys the damage, in the twilight, or is that the sun rising? I think it's twilight. He retracts what he says in episode 1. He admits that the fault was indeed his. And that is the end of season 3. Now, I just have a few final thoughts that I would love to share with you, and hopefully we can discuss them in the comments. But I did love this season. I really did. I mean, Lestat, the story of them rebuilding, the fact that it wasn't like a sexual relationship, it was much more based on communication. I loved it. I loved the storylines that went from the book. I mean, Regina, that was a stroke of genius, in my opinion. Obviously, I haven't been short on my praise for the show, but everything that's gone into this season was astonishing. I mean, the acting, the writing, the editing, the set design, everything was amazing. Akasha, wow. Every single person involved in this show deserves a massive round of applause. But I do have to say that I personally missed the pacing from seasons 1 and 2. And I think that's why I keep going back to episode 3. Episode 3, as difficult as it was to watch, felt the most like Interview to me. But on the other hand, I understand that the pace had to change for the story. I do wish we had more episodes. I mean, I wouldn't even want to be greedy, but 10 seems fair. I wonder what the reason for 7 is. I mean, is it the viewership? Is it just not high enough? Is it the cost? Is there a budgeting issue? I mean, it can't be the lack of content to draw from. I mean, I don't know. But ultimately, in my opinion, it was a great season of television, and I cannot wait for season 4. Okay, thank you so much again for watching, and I will be with you all the way through this wait until season 4. Thank you again, and I hope to see you in my next one. Okay, thank you. Bye.